Good evening, everyone.
Kavod Rav, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Yeah, so we're gonna finish the Beit Yosef, and then Mr. Hashem will finish the chapter. So let's see what we got here. So it says Beit Yosef like this. But Rabbeinu Yonah says Rabbeinu Yonah Katav nireh she'Talmud shelanu cholek al Yerushalmi. As we said, that the Talmud here, the Bavli, is arguing with the Yerushalmi, not the same thing. Because here it implies that even though he ate the full fruit, im pachot kazait, even though it's smaller than the kazait, you don't bless afterwards, according to the Bavli. Of Yerushalmi, but the Yerushalmi says the opposite, right? Mashma she'imu birya, that if it's a complete creation, a complete fruit, fapi she'en bo kazait, even though there's no kazait, you should bless afterwards. So that's the machloket that we had. We stated this already yesterday. Same thing. So we're continuing on that theme. So it says, but what's halacha? Talmud shenanu. So says Rabbeinu Yonah, we can say that our Talmud in Yerushalmi agrees with Yerushalmi. There's no machloket there. So we can say like this, right? If it's not the way to eat that fruit with its pit, kagon zait, for instance, olives, right? Who wants to eat olive pits? Right? Not a good idea. You're gonna get a stomach ache. The kitzur, but things like this. So it's there's gonna be a minimum size, right? Milvad haga'in. Besides so you have to have the proper size besides the pit. Right? Since it's not the way to eat it with the pit, so it turns out, right, that it's not really a complete fruit without the pit. When you remove the pit, because it's the way to remove that, right? Who wants to eat the pit, as we said. So it won't be complete. That's the thing. So what is he trying to say? He's trying to say that even the Yerushalmi will agree, since you don't have the pit inside, it's not a complete fruit, and therefore you don't have to make a after blessing. Uh, what are we talking about when it's less than a kazait? Because otherwise you would have to do it anyway. It doesn't really matter. Okay, fine. So Talmud shelanu. So it says because of this, they had to say in our Talmud, Gadol askinan. I'm sorry. Yeah, shebezait gadol askinan. We're talking about a big olive. So why does it matter that it's a big olive? He's trying to say like this, right? That even if you remove the pit, it still has the size of average olive, right? Middle size, right? Median size. Askinan. Aval imhu. But if it's something which is the way to eat with the pit, for instance, as we said, like pomegranates, right? What are you gonna do? Remove the seeds, and eat only the fruit? You're gonna spend 2 hours eating that thing. It's ridiculous, right? Whatever. So we just, swallow the whole thing, from top to bottom. That's what we do. Some people do that, by the way. Some people, just take the juice and spit out the pits, but, I guess most people don't do it that way. Go figure. I personally I don't spit it out. What can I tell you? That's my way. I just think it's just too cumbersome, That's the thing. What can I tell you? I just swallow it. Okay, fine. So he says here, והרי"ף כתב סתם, דכל איכא דלקא כזית. So the Rif says, right, that when you don't have a kazait, לא אבאי ברכה בסוף, you don't need a blessing in the end. ולא חילק בין דבר שהוא בריאה לדבר שאינו בריאה. So he didn't differentiate, with it's a full fruit, it's not a full fruit, it's a full kernel, it's not a full kernel, and all that stuff that we spoke about in Yerushalmi, the Rif doesn't bring that down. וכן הרמב"ם סתם כתב בפרק ג' פחות מכזית אינו מברך, right? So Rambam also says like that, like the Rif, So, right, you got already two out of the three, right? Two out of the big three here who are saying that, we're not going to go in this direction of, having like a little kernel and saying, oh, well, it's a complete fruit. So you got to bless on that, right? Born if I should. Come on, give me a break. That's going a little bit too far. That's the way the Shulchan Aruch paskins, But it does bring the other opinion also, as like a Yesh Omrim. So in other words, it has some prominence, that opinion, It's a sort of a cool thing there, a cool idea, right? Whatever, it's a chidush. But anyway, right, bottom line is halacha's not like that. Okay, good. So let's move on a little bit. So it says, the פחות מכזית אינו מברך לבסוף ולא חילק נראה שפשוט להם ירושלמי פליגת תלמוד הדינן. So it seems, he says, right, Bet Yosef, that since the Rif and the Rambam didn't paskin like the Yerushalmi, that there is a machloket between the Yerushalmi and Bavli. Not like these Rishonim will try to say, right, that, yeah, we can reconcile them, put them together, it's all one body. No, it's not. It's the right according to Rif and Rambam. Not so. So therefore, right, they say there is a machloket, and as you know, right, the rule is machloket, Bavli Yerushalmi. We go like the Bavli, right? If you've been with me for a while, you already know that, right? You've heard already 1,000 times this thing. Okay, fine. That's the way it is. So then, what else we got here? לא קיים לן כבתי. ומכל מקום, כיוון דכל הנח רבתה מסתפקים בדבר. So it says, but you know what? Since all these rabbis have a doubt regarding this, because they say maybe you can reconcile them, put them into one category here. So יש להיזהר שלא לאכול בריאה לבדה. So he says, therefore, just be on the safe side. Better not to eat something like that, right? Some kind of like a little fruit, tiny fruit. Like, you have like a tiny grape, which doesn't have the size of a kazite. Very common, you have something like that. And, so don't eat that by itself, because otherwise you're going to get into the machloket between, the Yerushalmi and Bavli. So, better to stay away from that. That's what he's saying, לא לכל בריאה ובריאה, אם אין בה כזית, כמו שכתב ראש, the Rosh says, וכן כתבו גם כן התוספות, תוספות also says this, פרק בתר דיומא, in the last פרק of יומא, או פרק הישן, also in סוכה, וכן כתבו הגאות מימון, also הגאות מימון, וכן הם דברי רבנו, so that's the way the two paskins as well. Okay, so there you go, right? So there is the other side there, and says Bet Yosef, it's a good idea to be stringent on this, it's not obligation. But to be on the safe side, if you're one of those people who likes to, play it safe, so then do it that way. Okay. So why is that? Because says Bet Yosef, after all, there are several Rishonim, who entertain this thought that there's no machloket between the Bavli and Yerushalmi, and if that's the case, so then you have to, you got to be careful about that. Okay, fine. Let's move on. וכן מסתפקים על ברכה בורא נפשות, אם צריכה שיעור אם לאו. Also, another doubt is that, whether bor nefashot also requires, a kazait. We said, right, that there are some who say it requires kazait, some say it does not require. So here, Bit Yosef brings the whole discussion. שם אני ראיתי את רבי יוחנן שאכל כזית מליח כתבות הסוד, right? So we saw that there was this thing, where they saw Rabbi Yochanan eating something, we call it salted, something salted, right? Some salted food, which was kazait. Katvot tasot. So says tasot, וזל לשונם, הרי אומר בבורא נפשות כיוון דלאו ברכה חשובה היא. So the Re says that since bor nefashot is not really such an important blessing, אפילו בבציר משיעורה במברכים בורא נפשות רבות. So it says even if it's less than the size, we still say it anyway. That's what he says. So here also, right, you see that he goes out on a limb over here, the Re, to have a different opinion about these things. Because most of the other Rishonim say that you do require kazait, to make it after blessing. Okay, so ולנראה שכיוון דבורא נפשות רבות תקנוה כנגד כל גפן, כי איך עד על הגפן בשיעורה, נפשות, נמי בשיעורה. So he says, right, the Bit Yosef, he doesn't hold that way, right? He says, just like they made a size for ala michya, same thing also they made for the bor nefashot. So why is that? So he says the reason is because they were like decreed, enacted, both of them, like one corresponding to the other. Bor nefashot and right ala michya. So therefore, they have the same rules. That's what he's saying. Okay, great. So what else we got here? והראש כתב שם, דאש נסתפק בדבר. Rosh says, you know what? There's a little of a doubt over here regarding this. דדילמה דווקא ברכה מעין שלוש. Maybe only מעין שלוש, right? Really needs a kazait. דכתיב, ואכלת וסברת וברכת. It says, you should eat and be satiated and bless. He debaya shiur. That one requires size. Lemor b'kdei achila, more b'kdei svia. According to one opinion, it's to eat, right? Kazait. The other opinion is that it has to be, you have to be satiated. About bor nefashot, but it says when it comes to bor nefashot, la baya shura, it doesn't really require the size. Or dilma, or perhaps on the other hand, lo nitkana bor nefashot, shehi derabanan, ela dumia de brachas because men shalosh. So it says bor nefashot was made like men shalosh, the same thing. One corresponding to the other. Shehi midoraita, which is from the Torah. והרמב"ם מפשט פשיטא לבורא נפשות רבות נמי בעיה שיעורה. So according to Rambam, right, it's clear that bor nefashot requires also a size of kazait. כתב פרק ג' ששותה פחות מרביעית, because he says, right, in פרק ג', the person who eats, drinks, I'm sorry, less than a רביעית, ben main, ben mashkin, whether it's wine or other types of drinks, it doesn't best afterwards at all. So he says the other drinks, their blessings bor nefashot. And therefore, he והפחות, ואפילו אחי כתב שאינו מברך אחריהם. And he writes that still we don't bless afterwards. מפני ששתה פחות מכשיר. Why? Because he drank less than the size. We already said yesterday, by the way, the size for drinks is not a kazait, it's a revi'it, right? So I want you to remember that because it's an important thing. The minimum size for drinks is revi'it. As we said, revi'it is 80 cc's, which is 3 ounces. That's it. If you didn't drink that much, forget about it. Don't bless afterwards. Okay, great. So Let's move on. אפילו אחי כתב שאינו מברך לאחרים בפני פגישתם פחות מקשור. וכן נראה מדברי הריף, that's what it seems also from the Rif, he says. So the Rif and the Rambam seem to agree here regarding this. Regarding this issue of Rabbi Yochanan, what he did there, he ate that salty food. Okay, fine. So let's move on. This goes until the end of the chapter. Now tonight we have time, Baruch Hashem. We can finish it, right? We're not limited here. Thank God for that. Okay, so it says over here, מה שכתב רבנו, בעוד מסתפקים ברכת אחרונה של יין. Also, there's another doubt, right, which is regarding the final blessing of wine. אם מברכים אותה דווקא על כזית או ברביעית. So the doubt is that does it require kazait or revi'it, right, when it comes to drinks? Oh. So we just said, right, that you need revi'it, but the truth is, that's halacha, yes. But there is a machloket about that too. There's a doubt about that. Like everything else. So what do we got here? Pek Hayashen, Pek Batad Yoma. It's in this Gemara, as we said, right? Two places. And Istapku, they had a doubt. If it's enough to have kazait, b'shtiya, when it comes to drinks, like just like food, or sheman, kiman the darish Rabbi Meir, or perhaps, since Rabbi Meir darshans, v'sabata zoshtiya, that when you satiated talking about drinks, by kibetz kabetza, so then maybe it needs really egg size. The la have shvi'it pepachot, because svia bechlachot, because you're not satiated with less than that. Or shema yesh lechalek ben, or maybe we have to differentiate between sviyat da'achila and sviyat da'shtiyah. Being satiated with eating and being satiated with drinking. It's not the same thing. Katav Rosh pek shlosha shechlu. So says the Rosh, lechach tov lizaher sheishte pachot mikazait. So he says, therefore, proper thing to do is either drink less than kazait or revi'it, or more than revi'it, right? One or the other. Why? Because you get into that gray area between this and that, so then you're getting into a doubt, right? That's the thing. So try not to do that. Try to avoid that. Not to bring yourself into a doubt. Okay, so וצריך לומר שסובר הראש לשיעור רביעית שווה לקבצה. So we have to say that, interesting. This is interesting. So he says the Rosh holds that revi'it and egg size is the same. Oh boy. Sheim hu pachot mikabetza, because if it's less than egg size, hiach haya mistalek min hasafek b'shtet revi'it. So then how do you get out of a doubt by drinking revi'it? But that Rambam pek gimel, but it says the Rambam holds the ben yain, the ben shamashkin, whether it's wine or other drinks, in mivrachin alem bracha achrona bepachot mirvit. It has to be revit according to Rambam. So therefore, you need 3 ounces, right? 80 cc's. Otherwise, forget about it. When in doubt, throw it out. Fine. Okay, then it says, "Haochel mishib'at aminim pachot mikazait." Okay, so what about if he's eating 7 species, right? Less than a kazait. What happens over there? So it says regarding this, the Bet Yosef, Sham Katav Rosh, says the Rosh, right? Betoch Divrei Ri, according to Ri, says Mashma She'im Achal B'Shivat Aminim Pachot Mikazur Shivarecha Acharav. So according to Ri, it seems like, again, right? He's the outlying opinion here, outlier opinion, right? Which is that it's the unorthodox approach, right, of the Ri here, which is that if you're eating less than kazait of the 7 species, you still have to bless it after blessing afterwards. Burn nefashot, you have to do. But I don't agree with this. Let me stop there. So who's saying this? He doesn't agree. Let's see what we got here. Right. So the Rosh doesn't agree. The Rosh doesn't agree with the Re. Okay, great. So מסתבר דעלמינא שראוי לברך עליו מעין שלוש בשביל חיסרון לשיעור לא ישייך ברכה אחרת. So he says, because if you're going to eat less than a size, you're not going to bless a different blessing. That's not the way it works, You're not going to bless it all. That's the way it works. Okay. וכן משמע מעיד רבי צדוק. That's what also implies in Rabbi Tzadok. In the words of Rabbi Tzadok, in Sukkah כ"ו עמוד ב', שלא בירך אחריו כלל. They didn't bless afterwards at all.
They still blessed before,
Of course.
but isn't there like a minimum amount, like if you're just tasting food or something like that?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that in the Shulchan Aruch. We mentioned that yesterday.
Right.
That if you're tasting, it's different, But here we're talking about eating
So
in these passages, right?
less than that amount is not considered just a taste.
So when it comes to tasting, if it's less than Revi'it, we don't bless. Less than 3 ounces. Whether it's a drink or a food also. Even though I did see, Moshe Feinstein, he has like a chidush on this a little bit. He says what they said Revi'it, only applies to certain things. He says other things it's really kazait. But really, it's a big chidush what he said there. According to the simple halakha, Shulchan Aruch, it's not like that. Everything is Revi'it. Okay, whatever. So, fine, let's move on. So, וכן משמע מעיד רבי צדוק, so that's where it comes out from Mr. Rabbi Tzadok, right? This Gemara in Sukkah כ"ו עמוד ב', שלא בירך אחריו כלל, he didn't bless afterwards at all. דאילו בירך ברכה אחרת, היה הספר מפרש, because if you would have blessed another blessing, it would have said so, explicitly. איזו ברכה בירך, which blessing he blessed. וכן מצאתי בשם רבנו יונה, that's what it says in רבנו יונה, עד כאן לשונות the end of it. Okay, fine. That's the end of who? That's the end of the Rosh. וכן דת רשב"א, also Rashba seems to say the same thing. וכן נראה מדברי הריף, also the Rif seems to say like that. וגם המוריכי כתב, also מוריכי writes the פרק כיצד מברכים, this פרק שנסתפק לרי אם יש לברך פחות מכשיעור. If there's a doubt, the Re has a doubt if he's gonna bless. We should bless when you eat less than a size. Meshivat Aminim from 7 species. לאחריו, afterwards, בורא נפשות. ומסכינן שאין מברך אחריו. So he says the conclusion is we do not. Right? כלל. עד כאן לשון, that's the end of it. So the Rosh and the Rashba are saying the same thing, which is that we don't go like the Re and we don't bless. If it's less than a kazait. Okay, good. והגור כתב אם שתה פחות מרביעית אין מברכין אחריו. So says the Agur that if he drank less than רביעית, right, of a drink, we don't bless afterwards. אלא בורא נפשות, only בורא נפשות, he says. Only בורא נפשות. Okay. כך כתב ריף, that's ריף says also, קיים עליהם כל לאחריו ולא כלום. So he says that we hold like that afterwards you don't bless nothing. If you didn't drink רביעית, מברך בורא נפשות רבות עד כאן. Oh, I see. Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't say it right. So the Rif says like this, right? That when it says in the Talmud, you don't bless nothing. Afterwards, it really means bar nefashot, right? A little bit of a right, a little bit hard pressed to right to say like that, but that's what they hold. There are several Rishonim we already saw that hold like this. But anyway, right, we'll see how it comes out in the halacha. Uh, hmm. So according to this opinion, if you drank less than a reed, you're gonna bless bar nefashot, right? But the truth is, we don't paskin like that. Bottom line, we don't bless anything. Okay, fine. So so he says, I'm wondering, like, how did they come up with this? When the Talmud says nothing, it really means born nefashot. It's like me telling you, yeah, listen, like I'm going to Florida, and then I wound up being in Georgia, like excuse me, it's not the same thing. Florida is Florida, Georgia is Georgia. Come on, give me a break. Okay, so all right, what else we got here? ללמוד משם דברך בורא בנפשות רבות. ואין משום דכתיב כתב היכא דלקה כזית לא באי ברכה לבסוף, אלא דברי הריף עצמו הם, ואין לומר בדבריו שתכול בסוף ולא כלום, מברך בו נפשות רבות, שהפוסק יש לו לפרש דבריו. So he doesn't agree that the Rif holds that way, the Beit Yosef. It doesn't agree with that. ועוד אפילו בדבר התלמוד, so this is also with the words of the Talmud, איכא למימר דלא אמרינן מברך בו נפשות רבות. There is to say, he says that we don't say that we do bar nefashot. רק כשאומר לי בסוף, unless he says at the end, ולא כלום, nothing, אבל אם יאמר לא באה ברכה לבסוף, but if he says that it doesn't need a blessing at all at the end, משמע דלא באה ברכה כלל, that implies it doesn't require blessing at all, ואפילו בר נפשות רבות, even bar nefashot. Okay. So, okay, we're done with this. No, we got more, a little bit more. Okay. Okay, we're almost there. So it says, "V'chen hireh midivri Rambam." Seems also from Rambam. He says the same thing. Shkatab per gimel. He writes in per gimel. Ha'ochel pachot mikazayit. If he eats less than a kazayit, ben mipat ben mishara acholim. Whether it's bread or other foods, you're not going to bless on that. Ranit Ba'er, right? Says we already explained. Samuch, we explained this already. Umash katab belo ben shivat aminin l'shar minim. So he says there's no difference between the seven species and the other species. Because when he said, right, that when he eats less than a size, even with bread, you don't bless afterwards. Not like the re, right, who implies that when you eat less than a kazait with the seven species, you're going to do bar nefashot. Okay, good. Okay, I think we're done. Yes, we are. Okay, great. So let's go to Shulchan Aruch, I guess. Let's see if we finished everything here. Just in case we left something out. This was a long Bet Yosef. Yes, it was. All right, great. Yeah, we're done. Okay. Let's go Shulchan Aruch. Okay, good. We're good. Now it says here like this. האוכל פחות מכזית, בין מפת, בין משאר אוכלים. So as we said, right, if you eat less than a kazait, whether it's bread or other foods, והשותה פחות מרבית, also if you drank less than רביעית, בין מיין, בין משאר משקין, whether it's wine or other drinks. מברך תחילה, ברכת אריאלה, אותו מין. So what do? In the beginning you bless the proper blessing for that species, whatever it is. ולאחריו אינו מברך כלל. And afterwards, he's not going to bless nothing, right? Because he ate too little. ויש מסתפקים לומר שעל דבר שהוא מקרייתו, כגון כרגיל של ענב או של רימון. So now, right, he brings the other opinion, which we saw. The right? That there's sort of a doubt when you eat like a full kernel, a full fruit, and it's listed in kazait. So, right, some say you have to bless on that because it's a full fruit. It's a full, right? So the truth is, we don't call this fruit in Hebrew. We call it bria. So what is bria? It's a full creation. It's a complete body. So, we're talking about like, grapes, for instance, right? Things like this, or pomegranates with their little seeds, things like that. They can be quite small, but they're full. So according to some opinions, as we said, you have to bless on that after blessing. We don't paskin that way, but right, we're sort of like considering it, So what does that mean? Shem barchin לאחריו אף על פי שאין כזית. לכך נכון להיזהר שלא לאכול בריאה פחות מכזית. So he says, therefore, proper thing to do, to stay out of this machloket is to avoid eating a complete body of a fruit, whatever, which is smaller than a kazait. Try not to do that because you're getting into a doubt whether you have to bless or not afterwards. This is not the halacha, as we said, it's a little sort of a chumrah, but if you want to be, Mr. Holy, Mr. Religious, right? Mr. Frum, as they say, the Ashkenazim. So then you got to be careful with that. Okay, that's the way it is. Fine, let's go to the Ramah. So says the Ramah over here, Velo mikre bria ela im achlo kemochu. So he says, right, it's not called bria, like complete creation. Otherwise, unless you eat it, as is, right? In other words, without any manipulation. As we said, right, like if you remove the pit, that's already not a complete creation. But if you remove the pit, right, as we said, because who wants to eat those pits, right? Nobody wants to eat them. So that's not called any more complete creation. So therefore, then there's not even going to be a doubt whether you have to bless on this or not. For sure, you don't have to bless. That's what he's saying. So let's give you some examples, right? Like we already spoke about a little bit. What's the example where you do eat the complete fruit as is? Like we said, like little grapes or pomegranates, things like that. You're going to eat the complete thing.
It'd be like blueberries.
Outside?
Blueberries.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. There's nothing in there, right? They don't remove anything from there, do they?
No. Mm-mm.
So why is there a hole in there? Blueberries. You know what I'm saying?
Why is there a hole in?
Like, the blueberries have a hole, don't they?
Not like an olive.
So why do they have holes? What was in there in that hole before they picked it?
There's not a hole. So they come from like the flower, right? So there's the bottom of it maybe looks a little bit like there's a hole, but it's not a hole. The seeds
It's not. Okay, I believe you.
Okay.
All right.
But that would be the kind of thing I would think if I just ate 3 blueberries, maybe I wouldn't eat a whole kazite worth.
Right, exactly. Something like that. Yeah.
You should have just make sure you have enough to bless on it.
Yeah, either in other words, either eat like a few of them or save it for next time. Whatever it is. Whatever you want to do. That's not the halakha, as we said, right? It's a chumrah, but okay. So okay, fine. So it is what it is. Anyway, um, so definitely like things like mulberries would be included, right? Things like that. Yeah, of course. Yeah, raspberries also, I guess. Yeah, why not? If they don't have a kazite, you have the same issue with them.
Aren't there? I thought raspberries were ha'adamah.
Right. When it comes to born nefashot, though, it's the same rule.
Okay, thank you.
You know what I mean? Nothing really changes over there. Okay, fine. So that's amazing. All right, this is a sort of an important halacha, like they all are. Okay, so anyway, right. Let's see what else we got here. There's a little bit more Shulchan Aruch here. Right. So then we have the other doubt, right, which is regarding the drinks. Some say, right, you have to make a blessing also if you drink a kazait. But and so he says, therefore, lachen tov yizher shelo lishtot pachot mikazait or revit, right? So therefore, right here also, don't go into that gray area. In other words, drink more than a kazait and less than a revit. Either one or the other, right? Don't do it in the middle, according to the chumrah, whatever, right? So again, this is just a chumrah; it's not a halacha. But people who are like very conscientious about these things, they do it. There are Jews like that in the world. God bless their souls. Okay, fine. Uh, so we have one more here, and we have time, so we should be able to knock this off, right, with no issues. All right, so let's see what we got here. Yeah, this is the last one. Bet. Right, this is the one you were talking about tasting, the dish. So let me just make sure we did all the bet Yosef on this bet, and then we'll come back here. Let's just make sure. Here, this bet. Yeah, I don't think we read bet. We did read it in the tour. That I remember. So let's read this, right? So as we said, right, what do we say in the tour? We said that when you're tasting something, you don't have to bless on it, unless you're eating a revi'it. So, but women do this all the time, right? When they're cooking, they taste the stuff as they cook. So it comes in very handy. Um, Also, another time it comes in handy is when you're tasting, Erev Shabbat to make sure, all your dishes are like really good for Shabbat, like extra, extra good. So you want to taste everything a little bit, to see if you got that right, mixture, that right ratio, special sauce, whatever. You got that right taste for Shabbat. So again, right, you don't have to bless on those things. That's what we're saying. Okay, fine. So let's see what we got here in the Bet Yosef. Okay. So it says, the Perek Haya Koreh, right? Where is this in Brachot? Yudal Amud Aleph, right? Metamet enan sichar bercha. When you're tasting, it says, right, you don't need to bless. That's the rule. V'asharoi b'tanit to'em v'en b'chach klum. Also, another thing, they taught there, which is that when you're in a fast, you're allowed to taste, foods. So that's coming up Thursday, right? We have a fast, Tanit Esther. So if a person needs to taste something on the Tanit, tells you the Gemara, you're allowed to, even though you're fasting. But if I'm not mistaken, right, what they tell you is to taste it and to spit it out, not to swallow it. We're gonna see that, okay, in a second. So anyway, there's nothing there. So the Rach says, right, that it means that you have to spit it out. That's why you don't bless. I'm not talking about the fast right now. I'm talking about in general. It's not considered to be his benefit really, just because you tasted it. Right? Look, but it says when you swallow it though, that's already you got a bless on that. According to the Rach. So it says because of that, hapolet en sarich bracha. The one who spits it out doesn't need a blessing. Because he's not really getting benefit from it. Samag also says like that. That when you taste, you don't have to make a blessing. Whether it's before or after, until Revi'it, right? If you eat Revi'it, then you need it already. So the Rach says, here also, right, it says, according to Rach, you got to spit it out. So it says the Rosh wrote the words of the tour. I'm sorry, not the tour. Rabbi Chananel, the Rach. He brought the Rach, and then afterwards he says, dafka revi'it. That's only if it's revi'it. But he says if it's less than revi'it, it's considered to be benefit when it comes to fasting. But it says it seems like you don't have to bless on that. Because he's not really benefiting in his stomach, Ad Kanashon, that's the end of the Rosh. Okay, fine. So now we got the Rambam. The Rambam pick Aleph bin Chotanit. What about the Rambam? What does he say? Katav vehu shelo yed ivla. Oh, so Rambam says, right, we're talking about he shouldn't swallow it. He also says, right, taste it and spit it out. Pick Aleph bin Chot. So what is he talking about there, the Rambam? He's talking about a fast. When it comes to fasting, you got to spit it out. That's what I told you guys a second ago, right? 2 minutes ago. Okay, so but in the laws of blessings, Rambam, what does he say there? There he says you don't have to bless. He doesn't say you got to spit it out. So that's the way we also learn the Rif. The first Perek of Kaniyot. Shemesh Katav, the Lizaher, the Lo Libala, that what she wrote, right? That be careful not to swallow it. Lo Kaila Leshiru Tvanit B'Tavka. That's only talking about when you're fasting. Don't swallow it. So what do we see from here, right? That we have a machloket here between the Rach on one side and the Rambam and the Rif on the other side. Okay, great. What else we got here? But Dibra Rabbeinu was to mean. So he says the words of the Torah here are not really, they're undefined, not really clearly written. In other words, which side he's going on? This side, that side. So he says because in the beginning he says, right, that when you taste, you don't have to bless. Until you do revit. So it implies that when you eat revit, you do have to bless. So regarding this, he wrote 2 different explanations. According to the first opinion, he even swallows it. Or on the other hand, could be that he has to spit it out. So he says, if so, even the Rach who says that you have to spit it out, it's only until Revit. Oh, the end you don't have to bless. But if you eat Revit, even though he's spitting it out, yes, is blessed anyway. This is the opposite of what the Rosh says. Interesting. Wow. So it's a little bit of a question mark here, right? How did the Tur write against his father? He doesn't do that usually. Like father, like son, they go together, these two, okay, right? That's the way it is. ועוד שהוא בעצמו כתב בסמוך, so it says here, also he wrote, right, close by, ומי הוא כשהוא פולט, אינו צריך אפילו על ברכה, על הרבה. When he spits it out, you know, even if you eat a lot, he says you don't have to bless. So he contradicts himself sort of here. ולכן, נראה לי, so he says, therefore, it seems to me, to explain, right, to reconcile this discrepancy here, לפרש, תחילת דברי רבנו הם כפי משמעות פשט, that the beginning of the tour is going like the simple meaning, they were talking about he tastes it and spits it out. וכיוון שאינו שותה, and since he's not drinking כדי ליהנות, in order to enjoy it, אלא לטעום, just to taste it, התבשיל, to taste the dish, כל בציר מרביעית לא חשיב בהנאה. So therefore anything less than רביעית is not called right, enjoying it. וזהו שכתב מיהו, and that's what he wrote, that however, מתאמת שתואמת תבשיל, that a person who's tasting the dish, אין צריך לברך עליו, you don't have to bless on it, עד רביעית, until you eat רביעית, לכאורה משמע אפילו אם הוא תואם ובולע. That implies that even if he's tasting and spitting it out, וכן כתב רמב"ם, so it says in Rambam also, סתם מתאמת אין צריכה ברכה. That when you write, he wrote simply that when you taste it, you don't need a blessing. Ad revit, until you do have revit. Mashma de'afilu boleh namis, that implies that even if you swallow it, and tzarich lavarech al revit, you don't have to bless on revit. Okay, great. But according to Rach, as we said, right, that's a different opinion. Mefaresh dalka betoem u'poleh, he's talking about that he spits it out. But in boleh, but if he swallows it, afilu bechoshu, even a little bit, tzarich lavarech, you have to get a bless on that, according to the Rach. Okay, so Perush se eno zinyan shiur revit. So he says this Perush, it doesn't really matter if you had a revit or not. Ela leinyan tanit, it only matters regarding fasting. Aval leinyan bracha, when it comes to blessing, the lefanav en chiluk, beforehand there's no differentiation in tachot mi revit, whether it's less than a revit or it's more than a revit. Okay, a little bit more here, almost done. Even if he swallows it even a little bit, he says, he would have to bless according to the Rach. If he doesn't swallow at all, even though he's tasting a lot of stuff there, he's got a mouthful, right? And you don't have to bless on that. Even though according to these two rabbis it implies shasurit revi'it, you cannot really taste the revi'it, misha sharui betanit, somebody who's in a fast. Even though he spits it out, bracha shani, so he says blessing is different, because he only blesses when he goes into his stomach, the benefit of the stomach. And since he didn't swallow it at all, he doesn't bless. That's what it seems to me, he says. Okay. To explain the words of Rabbeinu, right, which is the Torah. He says even though the language of the Torah is not really so aligned well, misaligned a little bit. So it says this book, Sefer the Ohel Moed, it says there that if you're tasting, you don't need a blessing. Even before. Unless there was Revit. But if you have Revit, you have to bless. Even though even though he is not swallowing nothing, because the palate enjoys that, right? Ad kan, that's the end of it. So he says, it seems to me that, it doesn't really depend on, enjoyment of the palate, whether you bless or not. It really depends on how much you eat in your stomach. As it says in the blessing, in the verse, right? It says you should eat and bless. And when it says you eat, that means you have to enjoy it, in your stomach. According to Rosh, like the Rosh. So what's halacha? Bottom line, right? It says Beit Yosef. Mashma the Rambam Rif Muskamim. Since we see, right, implies here that the Rif and the Rambam agree to one opinion. The Dat Echad, the Gam have a Safek bebrachot dakel. Also because of the element of right, a blessing in vain. There's a doubt whether you need a blessing or not. So therefore we go lenient here, right? So what does that mean? We're not gonna bless on that, right? Even if we swallow it. So when is that? Until Revi'it, right? But if you have Revi'it, that's a different story already. That's already too much, You don't need that much to taste something. It's a little bit too much. You're already eating there. Okay, great. So we're done with this chapter. Let's go to Shulchan Aruch and we'll stop there. So this is a very important practical halacha, obviously. So he says a person who's tasting a dish does not need to bless, right? Until you have Revi'it. Even if he swallows it. Now he brings the other opinion, right? That if he swallows it, right? You have to bless. They only absolve them when he spits it out. Right? So he says, and then, even if you eat a lot, you wouldn't need to bless. Okay, so says the Rama, right? So same thing, right? He says over here that since there's a doubt regarding this blessing, whether it's a blessing in vain or not. So therefore, right, as we said, when in doubt, throw it out. So we don't bless over here. That's the thing. So that's halakha, So bottom line, we don't go like the Rach. We go like the Rambam and the Rif, right, who say that even if you swallow it, you don't have to bless. Until Revi'it. Okay, great. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. Chazak Baruch Laila Tov. And we'll see you tomorrow, Bezat Hashem. We'll continue with the next chapter.
Thank you so much.
Have a good night. All the best.
Thank you, Rabbi.
God bless.